So coming up, we've got Jordi. Jordi is responsible for various different things. You've got, obviously, Composer, which everyone is familiar with. He co-wrote that. We've got Monologue, PHP Console, various other projects. He's currently working in conjunction with Composer on a product called Toran Proxy, which I'd encourage you to look at. It makes it's a paid version of like your own private Composer repository, like a status sort of a thing, and it makes working with Composer really fast and fun. And he's here today to talk about the best practices and do's and don'ts and all that stuff to help you guys get the most out of Composer, which you all, I certainly would hope, are using. So please make Jordi welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. So just shortly about me, I mean, he already ran through it, but I've been doing PHP and JavaScript for quite a while now. I was also on the Symfony core team, well, I still am, I guess, technically, but I don't do so much for it anymore. And for work, I'm just doing consulting or freelancing, depending on what I find. So also I'm from Europe, or, you know, I move around a lot, so I'll just keep it at Europe. But I'm from Belgium originally. So Composer, just to know real quick, like, because I wasn't sure, and Sebastian that organizes also wasn't quite sure. So does everyone know about Composer and use it, or anyone does not? Nope. Okay, it's fine. It's just to know if. So I put a few intro slides, but I guess I'll skip them. If you're all familiar, Composer, Packagist, done. This, I guess you all saw as well. Anyone is not clear with the Composer JSON, what it is? Yeah? So just shortly, that's how you define the dependencies. So like Composer being a dependency manager, you need to tell it, like my project relies on this and that other packages. And so that's essentially the way to define, in require there you have dependencies, and in require dev you have dev dependencies, which means dependencies you might need to develop the project, but not in production. So typically testing frameworks and tools and such things. And another of the main things that Composer does for you is handling autoloading. So that's the essentials. There's a ton more stuff you can put in there, but those are the basics. And then I'm not sure if I should go through this or not. Like, I just really show of hands, please say it if it's not clear to you what install and update does. Like the distinction between the two. If you feel there is any ambiguity there, please raise hands, then I go through it. No? Okay, cool. So, back on the more best practices topics. Semantic versioning. Again, show of hands. I'm gonna go with who knows about it this time because, okay, that's good. The others, who does not know about it, just a room check. Okay, that's about 80% of hands. So, so I'm gonna go like 50-50. Okay, let's just run through this then. So semantic versioning, you probably know what it is. If you probably don't know that, or possibly don't know the name, but I think you intuitively know what this is because it's basically common sense as a specification. So what it describes is that the version, like any packaged version, is defined by a major, a minor, and a patch version. So you have those three components. That's fairly, common. You're used to this. The only thing it tells is that the major is for BC breaks, the minor for features, and the patch for any bug fixes. So if you do any, like you start off with the 0.1, let's say, those are like, when you're at 0.1, it's considered offset by 1. So you would have 0 point major point minor, essentially. And whoops. Yeah, okay. So what happens at 0 is if you do bug fixes or even new features, you can just go 0.11, 0.12, etc. If you break anything, you go to 0.2, then eventually you have 1.0. And at that point, you really should follow Semver strictly, because that says, okay, if I'm using version 1 of something, as long as I update to 1.1, 1.2, 1, blah, 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 anything that's called 1 point something, I know there is no BC break. Like if the maintainers follow this strictly, it's clear, it's a contract between maintainers and users that shit won't break. And that's the main part. Like the new feature thing, okay, it's nice to know that if there is a minor release, it probably has new features, but new features shouldn't break stuff, right? So it's not as interesting, but the main point really is to get this BC break thing. Yeah. So I guess you're all familiar with that, as in like mentally, it's most projects follow it, so people know more or less how this works. But I think it's good to have a read on the page like the semver.org. It's, I don't know, like one screen worth of text. It's really not long, but it just clearly describes things, and I think that's very important. Okay, so constraints. In Composer, you probably know about this. It's just exact versions. Makes sense. Wildcards as well. They're fairly well known, and any non-developer would even be able to tell you what this means, I guess. Then, as of December, I think we have full node Semver support. So that means like Semver itself does not define version constraints, but there's a node package that's used by NPM which has a lot of constraints defined, and I figured it's might be a good thing to use exactly the same, because that way if you use both Node and Composer, which is the most likely like couple to happen. If you do web stuff, you're probably doing some JavaScript as well. So that makes sense to have interoperability there, just mentally, so that you can work with the same stuff. So we have a few new things. This hyphen range, just to easily define ranges. So yeah, there are a few distinctions there. You can see if you define 2.0, it's basically like up to 2.0 point anything. So it's anything under 2.1. But if you define 2.1.0, then it's until 2.1.0 inclusive. So it's just unbounded ranges. That's the only one you probably shouldn't use. But I want to insist on that as well, because it's really a bad idea. Because again, if you think about Semver, this means version 2 and 3 and 4, they're just fine because they're bigger or equal than 1. So you will get them installed. One day you'll update, you get the new thing that breaks all your code, then you're pissed off. It's understandable, but it's your own fault if you're using this, right? So thinking of the constraints is quite important to future-proof your project, basically, because down the line, when you get some project in 2 years, like after 2 years not touching it, you have to do some maintenance, you do an update and install something, everything blows up because you had bad constraints. That's pretty bad. Like I had some situations with old projects that were, using DevMaster for pretty much everything, and it's not fun when you don't know what this matches to anymore. We have a few operators. The end used to be a comma, but now it's just a white space. Like, see, and the O is a double pipe. So then next significant release that we have had for a while, but it's actually, I would say, the one you should mostly use. It's this tilde operator that means if you say tilde 1.2, you mean, okay, I want 1.2, and 1.3 is fine, 1.4 is fine, and so on, but I just don't want the 2.0 because that breaks my code, or possibly. So yeah, that's helpful to say, okay, I want at least this version because I need the features in those, like in the 1.2 in this case. But then new versions with new features are fine as long as they don't break my code. But there was a bit of an issue with this one that if you define like a more specific one, this one only allows the last number to go upwards. So in this case, you restrict to the 1.2 range. You can't go to 1.3, which is in most cases not so helpful. So now we have this caret operator, which is pretty much the same, except that no matter how many digits you define, it always follows semver very strictly. So it always allows you to go to the next major, and if you use a 0-point release, it also understands that you should offset by 1 in this case, and so it follows the right pattern again. So this, you should really use it. Like the caret now has been in for 2 months, so pretty much everyone should have a composer at this point that understands it, so you should go ahead and use it. For your projects, I would say, yeah, it's probably a good idea. For libraries, it's essential, I think, because you want to allow as big a range as possible for your users to avoid conflict. Okay, it's just put them everywhere. It's Australia, so maybe you can imagine crocodiles falling out of the sky or something. I don't know. just use it. Okay, so to install new packages, I don't know if anyone does not use Composer Require yet, but it's awesome because you don't need to know the version number or anything. If you just say, okay, I want this package now, just give me it. You type Composer Require, just the package name, and we'll go look at what the latest version is, and add that. Like make up a constraint with a tilde, or like we'll switch to caret after the next release, but for now it still uses tilde, and it just puts the current version in there, so you get the most sensible version constraint without having to think about it or editing JSON files and messing up commas and getting syntax errors. So totally worth it. Yeah, so you get that. All right, stabilities. Again, something I think so far that everyone is fairly familiar with, just what stabilities means. We all know alpha, beta, etc. But in Composer, they're just defined as this flow of things. And they're assigned in a simple way as well. If you tag something, you get stable by default. If you tag with a beta flag, it's beta. And for branches, it's just dev. And this last one tends to trip people up sometimes because they think, okay, I want a branch that's a beta branch. And they come and say, how do I do a beta branch? I called my branch, feature something beta, and it's a dev one, and I'm not happy. Yeah, okay. So the point is, branches are not tags, right? Like tags are point-in-time things, they don't change. Branches, you might call it beta if you want, but the fact is that you can commit anything that breaks anything. Tomorrow, in a month, whenever. So branches are not reliable point-in-time things. And actually, most package managers won't even allow you to install from a branch. Like it doesn't really make sense. In a way, it's not a version. So we have this as a convenience, so you can use the latest thing without a tag, but it's not something to rely on in terms of versioning. So you should, just realize this. And okay. So I just want to go through a few examples of resolution conflicts and what they mean and how to process them as error messages, let's say. So in this case, if we require 2 packages and then you have the 2 composer JSON of the dependencies there, they both require monologue, but in different versions. So one requires 1.3, any 1.3, the other one needs at least 1.6. You get this if you do that. And at that point, many people get kind of pissed off and they just blank out, which I understand because it's a lot of text and it doesn't look particularly nice. But actually, if you go through it, it sort of makes sense. So if you say, like, if you read installation request just means your composer JSON requires something. So you requested that LazyBob is installed in this version. It says that it's satisfiable. So we have here one version that satisfies it. It's all good. This one as well. But then it starts listing the dependencies of your dependencies, saying, OK, LazyBob requires monologue, which is satisfiable by these versions. And the cool Alice package requires monologue as well, which is satisfiable by those. The problem is then we clearly see those two sets of versions don't intersect. So there's nothing, like there's not one version that fulfills both. So you can't install because it's PHP, and if you have two versions of one thing, the first one autoloaded will just, that's it. Like you can't load two versions of the same class, unfortunately. So we end up with this, and yeah. What can we do? Not much. We have to fix one of the two packages to let them, like, because most likely the LazyBob package in this case would work just fine with anyone, like any version above 1.3, since there were no BC breaks. So you can just fix that, send a pull request, and then it should work. But that's, that highlights very well why you should use tilde or caret as a library, because if you have too strict requirements as a library, someday you're gonna mess with your user's life. Okay, so another fairly common case, I guess, is that you require dev master, and it's getting better and better, I think, but in the beginnings of Composer, nobody tagged anything, so you had a bit of a chicken and egg issue where you needed your dependencies to tag versions so you could tag your own and stuff like that. So, so a lot of packages still have those require on dev master, and what this means in this case, well, first of all, you'll get this, which says that you request bad package in version dev master, that's fine. But then this one requires monologue in dev master, and it says no matching package found. And there, if you go check packages, there is a dev master, so it's a bit ambiguous there. It tells you there's no version, which is weird. But the point is that we have this minimum stability here, which says beta. So anything under beta, and dev is definitely under beta, it's not visible to Composer. So now we have an issue. Because, yeah, this dependency here, we require it as well in version 1 point something, so that's fine, but it does not allow a dev master to be installed, so it's just not finding it. So we have to require monologue in dev version. We can do that fairly easily adding a add dev here, which just whitelists this specific package saying, okay, like the minimum stability is still better because you don't want to install everything in dev. But just for this one, we say dev is fine. So that will install just fine. And the reason is that, because you might not notice necessarily, but dev master is not compatible with 1.x, right? Dev master has no number. So as a kind of hack, what we have in Composer is this branch alias feature, which allows you to say dev master is actually kind of equivalent to this version. So it allows you to bring back those two concepts together of like dev branches and like version numbers. So this allows both to come together, and we install, and it's fine. Problem is, when the 2.0 comes out, the branch alias will change. And then dev master just became 2.0 instead of 1.0, or 1 point something. So in this case, we get again a conflict because the dependency requires dev master, which is 2, and we require 1. So we can't install again. Now, at this point, there's no good solution except from, again, like fixing the dependencies composer JSON. Because even if we require monologue in 2.0, like it's most likely going to break either our application or the dependency itself. So yeah, just again, don't use it. Like unless you really have to, don't use those dev branches. And like if you must, I would say at least use the alias. So like depend on 1.x at dev, because that way you say, okay, I need the latest dev, but you cannot put it in scope which version you mean. Okay. Log file. Again, show of hands, maybe. Who has the log file in their Gitignore? Yeah? Oh. Yeah, wrong. No, you really shouldn't. Okay, good. So you're just bad at reading questions. That's fine. So I hope the other ones did not misread the questions. Anyway, like if you have it in the Gitignore, you probably shouldn't, because it ensures that you have, like consistent installs, etc. And if you install on machines with low memory, you also, like by running composer install from the log file, you get very low memory usage, etc. So it's absolutely recommended to commit it. Yes, so commit it, and in production, run composer install and not update, because that way you make sure you have the same versions as you had in development. Because if you update while you deploy, most likely one day there's a regression in a new version, and your deployment just blows up because something broke and you didn't test it locally, or your CI server didn't test it. Or just do it, please. But yeah, it has been brought up to my attention lately that if you search on Google for composer.log, you find a bunch of them. Now, this is really bad. Like I don't know if people realize, but this essentially says, here's all the software I'm using with the exact versions. If there are like security issues, just go ahead. Like it's really not good. So just make sure you don't end up on that list. Like either don't deploy it or like remove it after installing dependencies, or just make sure it's not accessible to the web server. Use a public root that's not in your main directory. I don't know what. Like just deal with it somehow. It depends on the project, the setup, but just keep this in mind. Yeah. All right. So another cool feature, I think, that is probably underused is the ability to define custom commands. So we have this script thing, which is used typically for like sort of event hooking. So we have these post package update, post package install, etc., where you can just hook yourself in. But now you can also define custom commands that, like this test is completely arbitrary. It's not defined anywhere. And when you run composer test, if it doesn't know, like if it doesn't have a command that's called test, it will just look through these to these scripts, and if there's one, it runs that. So in this case, it's like a shell script thing. So you can run like shell commands, or just have a class name and a method name, and then it will statically call that. So I think it's cool because it allows us to standardize some things. Like it's not there yet, but if every project had that, then you can just run composer test in any project, and it just does the right thing. Because yeah, I mean, most projects are happy with just PHP unit, but sometimes you have maybe Bhat or I don't know, other testing tools, and you might have some flags you need to add, etc. So it's a good way to standardize things across the community. And another point to mention here is that the vendor, like the bin directory, is pushed onto the path. So all the stuff you depend on is available as commands. Like you don't have to add vendor/bin/php unit. You can just do php unit. Yep. And if you need to pass commands to the child command, to pass arguments to the child command, sorry, that's fairly standard, like Unix thing, but some people don't know about it. So just a double dash kind of stops the argument parsing of the main command, and then it's forwarded to the next sort of. All right. Okay, so a common problem maybe is if you use open source, a lot of stuff has bugs in it. So sometimes you fix a bug and send a pull request, but then if it's a critical issue, you probably want to use it, like use the fix already before they review it and merge it and so on. So an easy way is to just use your fork and like add it as a custom repository, so you can start relying on your fork. But usually you have a branch that is not the master one. You will do your patch in a feature branch. So you start installing this dev my patch. But then if it's Symfony or whatever framework you're using, if you do a patch like that, most likely you have some other stuff installed, like plugins or something that rely on Symfony or on the framework. So they require as well, like I might have bundles that require Symfony 2.5, and my patch version again is not a number, so we don't have a match there. We'll get a conflict. We could edit the branch like the composer.json and add this branch alias saying that my patch is a 2.5, but this kind of sucks because you don't want your fix to contain a change to composer.json for your branch name, which has nothing to do with the project. So that's not so convenient. So the thing you can do there is say require dev my patch as some other version, and that's a way to alias it at the user level, let's say. So at this point, the Symfony package will have kind of two versions at the same time. So it fulfills like the 2.5 requirements and the dev my patch requirements, but it will install the first one. Okay, Toran Proxy. Ben mentioned it shortly, but I just want to do a short sales pitch. Like it's not. Don't want to abuse your time too much, but basically what it does is it sits between you and GitHub and Packagist and everything. I think it's actually in Australia more than anywhere else a good thing because you have long tubes to everywhere. And like GitHub, as far as I know, is still only hosted in the US. So that probably means like long, slow connections to you. I didn't actually try it since I'm here, but yeah, already in Europe it's not so great. So I can imagine that here it's quite shit. So yeah, what it does is it sits in between and proxies everything and caches it on the fly. So next time you install, it's already in the cache, and you get fast downloads from your server and not from GitHub. And so it does the Git repos as well as the zip files. So hopefully that helps with most things. And the other side is that it does private package hosting. So if in case you want. In case you have private packages within the company that you're relying on, you can easily have them set up there. And the main thing that makes it a sales pitch is that it's not free. It's one of the few things which I'm working on, which is not open source. But yeah, the point was just to get some funding back into the whole open source model because as you may know, open source is not extremely profitable. So yeah, I thought, like last year, I was having a bit of a downtime with motivation, and also I figured, like, I need to get some way to fund this so that, you know, there's fun in funding. So it just makes it a bit easier to spend time like fixing random bugs and stuff like that. If you're being a bit paid for it, so yeah, just check it out. Like, go have a look. Then a few community resources that I want to highlight. I think Ben, am I doing okay with time? Yes. All right.
16 minutes.
Perfect. I hope you have questions. I'm almost done. So just start thinking about questions. So a few things. Melody. I don't know if you have seen it. It's a weird thing. It's a way to run, like, to have a PHP script which has a composer.json kind of on top, and then the code. So it's like in one file you define dependencies and you use them. And so you can just run like melody run this script and pass the file name. It will look up the dependencies, install them, and then run the code. So it's kind of a weird thing, but it's a cool way to have single file, like small utilities that, you know, small scripts that rely on other stuff. PackAnalyst is a pretty cool and weird project. It scans all the code of all the packages that are listed on Packagist, and it just allows you to search it as in like code-wise search. So you can say, I have this interface in my open source project, and I want to see who implements that or who uses it. And so you can see a list of classes in other open source packages that implement your interface, which can be quite interesting, I think, when you want to do changes or, you know, just know how people are using stuff. So it's a pretty interesting resource. That as well, if you have an open source package, you can check there which others are depending on it. So that can be a motivation thing, you know. If you see, okay, everyone is using it, it's awesome. Just when you feel a bit depressed about people renting on GitHub. Composer Cleaner is just the tool to remove all the tests and documentation and like random non-PHP files that are in the vendor directory. So that's just if you want to save disk space. I don't know why, but some people really care about this. If you do, just go check it out. The row of security advisories, that's a pretty cool thing. It takes the database from the Sensio Labs security thingy. I don't remember the exact name. But so basically, it's an open database of security advisories for PHP packages. And this takes the entire database and creates a composer package that if you require it, it basically has a bunch of conflict rules with all the like vulnerable versions. So if you require that, it prevents you from installing anything with a security advisory for that version. So it's a cool way to avoid having vulnerable stuff. Fairly easy to do, just one line in the composer.json. And finally, this awesome PHP project that's it's just a like user-curated list of awesome PHP projects, which kind of helps because Packagist is sort of a mess. Like sometimes I see the problem that you go there, you search for something, and then you get a bunch of results. It's not always helpful. So this is very opinionated, obviously. It's just one guy's take on it, but it has a fairly comprehensive list. So just, yeah. Finally, just a few words about contributing to open source, which has nothing to do with my talk, but I thought I'd put it in anyway. There are a few things that are beyond code. The obvious one is documentation. I guess everyone thinks of that, and nobody wants to do it because we're all developer and this is boring. I understand, but still, like if you can, it's good. But more importantly, I think other things that are overlooked and that actually don't take so much time. So like if you think I really don't have time for open source, just going into a README file of something you use, and you know what it does, and you know it's useful for you, and then you see that the README file is just useless, which happens a lot. So you go like, all right, you can install it like this, and then that's it. You don't know what it does, you don't know what it's good for, and this kind of sucks. So if as a user of something, you can help the project just by editing the README file and adding like, it's awesome because it does this and that, and it's good for doing things. That would be, I think, of great help, because that means other people will get there, actually use it, and so you get more users for that thing and more fixes, more features, so you benefit as well. The other thing is maintaining a changelog, which some people don't do as maintainers, and actually, as a user, you can still do it, right? Like, you can just send a pull request to the changelog for past versions. It's still useful, I think, because if you update some stuff, sometimes you're behind for a few years, you just don't update. Then you come back, you want to see what's new. So having the changelog even retroactively is still a good thing. So do it, and thank you. So I hope you all thought of questions. We have 10 minutes, apparently.
Just mention the mics as well.
Yes, so just over there is one. Just wait for the mics. I don't know, yeah, raise your hand so the mic can find you.
I just made a composer JSON file and put a post update command rmrf tilde. It worked.
Yes.
Mercurial and Git were both pretty careful not to include hooks in the stuff that gets pushed around. Why wasn't Composer?
Okay, so the post-update stuff is only executed for your composer JSON. Like what is in your dependencies, we don't execute it. So if you in your file says rmrf whatever, yeah, no, sure. I mean, I don't know where the boundary is on sanity. Like it's, I see what you mean. I mean, I don't even know, like, you know, if you want to go against like malicious code at some level, like you can obfuscate this and, you know, have a echo base64 decode of rmrf and then just pipe that into bash and done, right? Like it's, how do you even detect this stuff? I don't know. But so did it wipe your machine or? Okay. But yeah, if you want to spend time on it, I would say send a pull request, but I won't because yeah. But it's interesting attempt at messing your own computer up. Any other question? Yep.
Thanks. Jordi, you've talked about techniques for pinning versions and for finding versions that have security flaws. Have you got any advice for tools or practices that will help warn you when you're running stupidly old versions of things just because there's cool new features that maybe you didn't know about?
Not directly. I mean, it's a bit difficult always to know like what it is stupidly old, or you know, like age doesn't always mean that it's bad or that it's out of date really. But one thing you can do,
unmaintained is probably the, you know, there's no
well,
fixes
yeah,
coming for this old
unmaintained, yeah,
version.
but even that's a tough metric, right? Like it's, I know I have some packages which are just like simple things which are kind of done, right? Like there's no, it hasn't been a commit in 2 years, but not because it's broken, it's just because it's done. I agree, it's a fairly rare
I'm thinking
case.
about something like, say, tell me all the packages that have either a new feature version or a new major version.
Okay. there is, I think, a pull request for that to have in the status command. Like right now, composer status just shows you uncommitted changes you might have in the vendor directory. But we'd like to extend that to have also like out-of-date dependencies. So I think in npm you have this npm outdated command which does that. Right now, like it's not there yet, but as a workaround, you can just run composer update with --dry run, which will like do an update but not apply anything. It will just output the changes it would do. So you can see what you would update to, but if your requirements are too specific, you won't know that there's a new version. So that's
Okay, yeah, I can see that a technique might be to have an unpinned version of your config file and run an update on that and see what it would have changed.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
As a workaround, but like hopefully we'll get this in and just have an easy way.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a funny situation recently. We were doing a project, and the project required a framework, and the framework had a dependency, and we really didn't want that specific dependency, and we weren't using it at all. So the simple question is there a way to somehow discard a certain dependency of a dependency, or even push it to the required dev or anything like that?
Yeah, so there is a way. If so, if you have a composer JSON, can you read this? Or? So if you do provide, that's a special kind of like require link, but it's saying my package provides this package. So let's say that the dependency you don't want is like, so you have dependency, and so if you just say that, normally that should prevent it from being installed because it says that your package already provides it. You probably shouldn't do that in an open source package though, like because that's kind of nasty. But I mean, it shouldn't really cause issues. But it's just like if someone depends on your package, then they might not be able to install other stuff at the same time. So it's not good. But in a private thing, like for your application, sure. That's a good way to do it. On the other hand, the question is like, why was it required, right?
It's used by like a certain function, a certain module framework that just wasn't used.
Okay, but so that's a good example of a case where this should probably be like externalized in another package and not be in the framework, so that you could have this like optional functionality that depends on the other package. So you say.
I think they have done that recently with the newest version, which we're not using.
That's a Laravel thing, right?
Yes.
No, I'm not sure if it was you, but there was someone asking about exactly that for Laravel.
Quite possibly.
On IRC like a week ago or so. This should fix it.
Yeah. Thank you.
5 minutes still, so keep them coming.
I was just wondering about the inclusion of the script command. Is that to kind of make Composer a replacement for other build tools like Make and Ant and all those sort of things, or was there another specific reason for that?
I'm not sure I'm not sure why people really want this. Because I see your point. Like there are already a million build tools out there, and to me, the one advantage is really saying that this sort of standardization of things, because okay, people installing via Composer, they have they have Composer already. So if you can just say Composer test, cool. But it's not a major like groundbreaking feature, right? It's yes, you could use any other build tool. It's just convenience, I guess.
Curious about your thoughts on Pickle and when you might, I don't know if you're involved personally, but when it might be ready for prime time and whether we would see a title shift away from Pickle towards it like we have with Composer, etc.
I don't know if Pierre is here. I guess he left or... Yeah. Could be either way. So you should talk to Pierre because I mean he knows a lot more about this because I'm not directly involved and I know the goals and I've talked to them in terms of how to integrate well with Composer, but I actually haven't tried it out or done much with that yet. But I think like the hope is to get this within the next few months. I mean that's the hope, you know, deadlines in open source. So yeah, like it should, ideally it should be sort of a packaged thing for PHP extensions and then we, like once we have that, we can integrate that in Composer as well and say, if you require an extension that's not installed, then we call pickle and just install it. So
Thank you.
that'd be nice.
Is there a way to update a single package without doing a full Composer update and updating?
Yes,
everything?
you can do like Composer update and then the dependency name. So you can also do this if you have a billion like Symfony packages. You can do this, for example. And yeah, or have more packages as well, right? And also without typo.
So with the security advisories package you mentioned, is there a way to make that automatic or periodically run? Because at the moment, I think you have to do an update and it'll check. But if you've got a project that's live, you're not going to do an update every week. You're going to do it when you want to upgrade your dependencies. So a way to check, ongoing vulnerabilities, make sure there's nothing vulnerable there. Does that make sense?
With the Sensio tool, I don't know. Let me just Sensio security thingy. Yes. So this security.sensiolabs.org. This you can. It lets you upload a log file, I think. Yeah. So you could. Like they have this command line tool as well, so you can like build run that as a cron job if you want, like daily. Just upload the composer log and check for your existing dependencies if there is any issue. That would be a way.
I'm currently working on it's a single app that's actually got two apps, one for the front end, one for the back end, and then we've got probably almost a dozen in-house libraries that we use. And at the moment, it seems that there's no easy way to manage when we update one of the libraries. We have to go and update a lock file on 3 other libraries and maybe on those other 2 packages. Have you got any advice for how that might be easier managed?
Decoupling and I mean, in a way it's good you're doing it already, decoupling some stuff, but I guess the more strictly you decouple in terms of let's say, I don't know, it's a tough one. I see your problem, but I would say like those reusable stuff you extract, ideally they should be extremely self-contained and TDD based, like, because that allows you to develop them kind of independently and easily, and then just load the last version when you need it. But yeah, if you have like cross dependencies and stuff like that, it gets a bit messy. I see that. I think that's something we might resolve eventually with the npm-like link command, which allows you to symlink things that it's a bit nasty, but it might help. So yeah, I don't have a great solution for that right now. Sorry. We have like no more time, I think. But okay, last one.
Hey Jordi, thanks for the talk. You were saying to always commit the composer.lock in your own projects, but what about if you are releasing something open source? Should you include that composer.lock in there, or should you leave it open so the package can install the dependencies? Other packages that depend on yours.
Doesn't, like, the dependencies won't see the log file, so, well, not the dependencies, but projects using yours as a dependency won't see that log file at all, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. Like, it's less important for sure. Like, for libraries, I think either way is fine, and it's not as important. But for projects, like which is what most people do, it's like 99.9% you should commit it. So that's why I say it like that, completely white and like black and white approach, because yeah, it's.
Gotcha. Thanks for that.
All right. Thank you. I think we're done.